Good evening, ladies and gentlemen who may be following us online, and good evening to everybody who's in the room. I'm Councillor Ian Edwards, I'm Leader of the Council, and I am Chairman of Cabinet. This meeting is being recorded and can be followed on YouTube. There are members of the public present, so I will just remind everybody that if the fire alarm sounds, we will be evacuating the building. The fire exits, the best one is the way you came in. There are behind us as well. We will be around to facilitate your exit, and the quickest way is down the staircase by what we call the Bones staircase. You'll see the wooden structures there. I'd ask everybody to make sure their devices are turned to silent, phones and what have you, and just to let everybody know that we have moved over to paperless, and therefore, as you can see, we're all working from our laptops. Let me assure you that we are working following the business practice and not YouTube or emails or anything else. Mark, apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. We have all Cabinet members present.
Thank you. Colleagues, are there any additional declarations of interest in matters before this meeting?
No.
Thank you. And item 3 is to approve the minutes of the last Cabinet meeting. They're on pages 5 to 14. Are those minutes agreed?
Agreed.
Item 4, this is to confirm that the items of business marked in Part 1 will be considered in public, and the items of business marked in Part 2 will be in private. We will break the meeting between Part 1 and Part 2, and we will also be breaking the YouTube link. Members of the public will be invited to leave the room as we move through that part. Turning now to agenda item 5, which is Part 1. This was to be the budget and future medium-term financial forecast and strategy. That has been deferred. There is a Cabinet meeting on the 20th of February to take that matter. So item 5 is deferred to that meeting. Item 6, the school's budget, is similarly deferred and will be considered at the same time. So we now move to item 7, the temporary accommodation strategy and action plan. Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you, Leader, and good evening, fellow Cabinet members. Item 7 is where the Cabinet is asked to review and note the temporary accommodation strategy and action plan, which will set out the measures to reduce both cost and reliance on temporary accommodation in Hillingdon. The strategy focuses on homelessness prevention, increasing the supply of suitable housing, and financial sustainability. Just by way of background, to highlight the key pressures, there are 1,275 households in temporary accommodation as of January 2025, reflecting a steep increase in demand. Hillingdon, like other boroughs, faces soaring costs associated with temporary accommodation, impacting on the medium-term financial strategy. There has been a 41% reduction in private rental listings in Hillingdon, making the problem a real crisis for us in our borough. Section 21 evictions and rising private rental costs are leading causes of homelessness, and the borough's housing stock has not grown fast enough to meet the demand, with 400 lettings annually down from 550 a decade ago. The strategy comprises of a number of strategic objectives, one being to reduce the homelessness demand, to strengthen our prevention strategies, expand early intervention and self-service housing options, and to reduce evictions, particularly in the private rented housing sector. The second objective is to increase housing supply, expand our social housing lettings and private rental options, bring empty homes back into use, and introduce long-term leasing schemes. The third objective is to reduce temporary accommodation costs, which is to negotiate lower rates with providers, increase reliance on council-owned properties, and shift away from expensive nightly paid placements. Last objective is to deliver long-term housing solutions, which is investing in new build social housing, expand our acquisition programs for permanent housing, and to implement financial mechanisms to increase available housing. In terms of the financial implications, Hillingdon's temporary accommodation spend is projected to be at £35.6 million for 24-25, significantly exceeding budgeted amounts. The strategy aims to reduce expenditure by £3.6 million in 25-26 through efficiency measures and smarter ways of working. Progress will be monitored through financial activity-based modelling and updated monthly and annually. In terms of governance, quarterly updates will be provided to Cabinet with a focus on homelessness prevention, cost reductions and bringing empty homes back into use. The Residents Services Select Committee is conducting a review of homelessness services with its findings expected later this year. I therefore move the 3 recommendations outlined on page 22 of the Cabinet agenda, which is to note the significant pressures that Hillingdon is facing, to note the temporary accommodation strategy and action plan that's outlined in the appendix, and to agree to receive quarterly updates as to the frequency determined by myself on progress in delivering that strategy, aligned with homelessness prevention, rough sleeping strategy, and the impact on the medium-term financial strategy to include details of the actions being taken to bring empty homes back into use through occupation. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tuckwell, and also thank you to the officers that have pulled together this. It is an unfortunate challenge that is a national challenge, the homelessness, but it's particularly acute in London. We're not alone as an authority, but by providing this report it shows some clarity of thinking, analysis of the problem and solutions to be implemented. I value this a great deal. I will value the quarterly reports. That will be most helpful. What I would ask is if you could work with officers, please, to strengthen the Appendix 1. The action plan has measures of success, but that they are not particularly specific in some areas. That doesn't particularly enable us to know whether we're on or off target, or whether we're achieving or underachieving or overachieving. And I would ask that we tighten those where we can. I know some of it will be broad estimates, but then we should indicate that that is the case. But we really want to begin to start tightening down on our target setting and monitoring, please. And I know that the Chief Executive is nodding and taking that back, and he will be feeding that through to the officers. But notwithstanding that very slight feedback, and sees that being improved in the next reporting in a quarter's time, are the recommendations agreed, colleagues?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. You must hold with me for a second whilst we get used to this modern technology and how we move around and which bookmark to press to get us back to where we want to be. We're now on to agenda item 8, the revised local development scheme. Again, Councillor Tuckwell.
Yep, thank you, Leader. Over to me again. So on this report, Cabinet is asked to endorse a revised local development scheme for adoption by full council and to authorise the Director of Planning and Sustainable Growth to make necessary minor changes in consultations with the Cabinet member. The Local Plan Development Scheme is a statutory requirement under the Compulsory Purchase Act 2004. It sets out Hillingdon Council's 3-year programme for updating our planning policies. This update responds to the Deputy Prime Minister's request for all local planning authorities to publish the revised local development scheme by the 6th of March 2025, following changes to the National Planning Policy Framework. Again, key objectives are to ensure compliance with national planning deadlines and requirements, to introduce a 3-stage local plan programme including a new draft plan stage to improve policy development, consultation and legal robustness. It also aligns Hillingdon's local plan with the revised London plan and housing targets and reduces the risk of legal challenges, unplanned extensions and delays in the examination process. In terms of strategic benefits, it supports the Council's priorities, including sustainable development, economic growth and high quality housing. It strengthens community engagement by providing additional consultation opportunities and enhances the Council's ability to influence planning and development decisions effectively. In terms of legal considerations, the cost of the local plan will be met through existing budgets with minor additional expenditure for consultation. Failing to update the local plan could result in intervention from government or the Mayor of London. I therefore move the recommendation outlined on page 58 of the Cabinet agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, the recommendation is agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 9 is a report, a public preview report that gives some slightly more information than that contained in the agenda regarding the matters that will be considered in private. The decisions resulting of our discussions in private are published in due course. That brings to a close the part 1. Ask members of the public to leave and the link to be broken, and we will then move to part 2. Thank you.